Hello to all my dear brothers and sisters, and welcome to this channel. My name is Abdias. Let me remind you that I am one of Jehovah's Witnesses, very proud to be one, and of course I am deeply convinced that this organization truly belongs to the one true God, Jehovah. If you want to know my arguments on this subject, I refer you to videos 3, 4, and 5 on this channel. I suggest we start off strong, and if you are one of my brothers or sisters especially, don't leave just yet. You might be surprised by this video. So imagine the following scene, which is completely fictional and only meant to help people reason from a biblical perspective. Let's be clear about that. So imagine the scene. In a split second, picture all the members of the governing body rushing into their homes, urgently gathering a few belongings and immediately leaving for 200 kilometers away to go live in a city where they don't know a single person. If they leave that city, they can be killed instantly, legally, and by any means. Or else imagine the members of the governing body, some on their knees, others lying on the ground, tied up with a circle formed around each of them. A group, let's say, of about 10 brothers, each holding a very large stone in their hands. At the signal, they are going to crush the skull of each member of the governing body. And all of this, listen to me carefully, with the full approval of Jehovah. What I have just described is extremely shocking for the vast majority of Jehovah's Witnesses who are listening to me right now, and I completely understand that. This subject, I'm not going to go into it now. It will be the topic of an upcoming video that will help us understand what Jehovah might think about the utterly reprehensible attitude of the brothers on the governing body during the 2020 crisis. Does Jehovah's thinking speak to you, brothers and sisters? Or maybe that's secondary for you? Maybe the thinking of the governing body is more important than Jehovah's thinking in your eyes? So if you think this upcoming video might interest you, you can subscribe. Alright, with that said, let's begin. This video follows videos number 6 and 7, which were dedicated to this blind obedience to those who lead us, to whom we are very regularly encouraged to submit, which to me seems absolutely unbiblical and, as the disaster during the pandemic proved, can even be extremely dangerous, even leading to the death of our dear brothers and sisters. And that's why this subject is particularly close to my heart, with the goal being that in the future, brothers and sisters will know how to react and what their rights are in Jehovah's eyes. So let's look at the reasons that might lead brothers and sisters to blindly obey the elders in the congregations. The Examinons brochure from February 2nd, 2025. We could read there, we should be truly willing to obey those to whom Jehovah has entrusted a certain authority, end of quote. This is obviously referring to the elders. This sentence can give the impression that if you have an elder in front of you, he has authority. Well, it's Jehovah himself who decided to entrust it to him. But this sentence could also be understood to mean that elders receive this authority automatically, simply because of their appointment. An appointment that Jehovah may not actually approve of. For example, a husband automatically receives a certain authority over his family because Jehovah has entrusted him with that authority. Just like all husbands around the world, that's how it is. So in the same way, when a brother is appointed as an elder, he automatically receives this authority that Jehovah has established, even though that does not necessarily mean that Jehovah approves of his appointment. The Watchtower of March 16th, pages 20 to 21, paragraph 9 stated, Jesus appointed elders to lead the congregation. He wants us to respect them and to follow their instructions. It's not always easy, but we can ask Jehovah for his Holy Spirit to help us obey any instruction from the elders. End of quote. So things are a bit different. This time it is Jesus who appoints the elders. Once again, this sentence can be understood in these two different ways. But it must be acknowledged that these wordings still give the impression that it is Jehovah or Jesus who individually choose the elders. Last statement taken from the book Remplènement de témoignages, page 43, in a footnote at the bottom of the page. It now reads, the governing body appoints the circuit overseers, who themselves are responsible for appointing elders and ministerial servants. So, is it Jehovah God or Jesus Christ, or perhaps the circuit overseers who truly appoint the elders in the congregation? For me, Jehovah or Jesus is the same. Not because they are the same person, but because Jesus is the representative of his Father Jehovah, and as such, things that Jesus has done can be attributed to Jehovah. On the other hand, there is a big difference between Jehovah, the Almighty and perfect God, who would appoint elders and ministerial servants, and a simple, imperfect circuit overseer. So, what is the correct answer? Well, it's the last one. It's the circuit overseers who appoint the elders. What allows us to say that? Well, first of all, anyone who is even a little bit reasonable knows very well that among the hundreds of thousands of elders and ministerial servants who have been appointed over more than a century, there were inevitably many whose appointment was absolutely not approved by Jehovah. That's easy to understand. For example, no one will make me believe that the pedophile who was appointed 20 years ago in my congregation, when he had already been a pedophile for a very long time, was appointed by Jehovah or Jesus. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison, if I remember correctly. And I was actually at the center of this case since I was studying with his stepson, whom he was abusing. I had sensed that something was wrong, but unfortunately I couldn't figure out what the problem was. Also, no one will convince me that the spies who infiltrated the bodies of elders in the 1940s in the United States, I believe, were appointed by Jehovah. Once again, the fact that Jehovah allows something does not mean that he approves of it. For example, the fact that Jehovah allows abnormal things to happen within the governing body does not mean that he approves of this within his organization. So how? How did so many brothers and sisters come to believe that the appointment of every elder has Jehovah's approval? Let's look at that. The book Fully Accomplish Your Ministry, page 43, paragraph 20, stated the following. Men who meet the requirements set out in the Bible are appointed as elders or ministerial servants in the congregations. So it can be said that those who have the necessary qualifications are appointed by Holy Spirit. End of quote. In fact, there are many publications that support the idea that elders and ministerial servants are appointed by Holy Spirit on the grounds that the qualifications are listed in the Bible and that the Bible was inspired by Holy Spirit. Actually, that's pretty ambiguous because teaching that elders are appointed by Holy Spirit really suggests that it is Jehovah himself personally who appoints elders and ministerial servants. This, combined with the statements we analyzed earlier, helps explain why many brothers and sisters end up thinking that it is Jehovah or Jesus who appoints these elders. For example, when brothers and sisters hear words like those found in the October 15th, 2009 Watchtower, page 16, paragraph 18, I quote, "Finally, we can prove that we are friends of Christ by cooperating with the elders of the congregation. These men are appointed by Holy Spirit under Christ's direction." What do the brothers and sisters understand if not that it is truly Jehovah or Jesus who appoints the elders? That being said, it is true that before recommending a brother for appointment, the elders pray to Jehovah to receive his Holy Spirit and guidance. But even so, we all know that when we ask Jehovah for his Holy Spirit, we don't become puppets in his hands, guided like robots to do his will. That's not how it works in our personal lives. And it doesn't work that way within Jehovah's organization, nor within the governing body either. So you might ask me, what interest does the governing body have? Could it have a reason to maintain this ambiguity? Well, that's where we come back to our topic, blind obedience to those who lead us. Wait, brothers, sisters, would you dare to oppose or disobey the brothers whom Jehovah has appointed, the brothers who were chosen by the Holy Spirit? You see, this way of presenting things conditions the brothers and sisters to a perfect submission and blind obedience to those who lead us. Let me read you again the sentence from the March 2016 Watchtower. We can ask Jehovah for his Holy Spirit to help us obey any instruction from the elders. So, quite rightly, I am talking about blind obedience within the organization. Some will answer, yes, okay, but the Bible clearly explains that we must obey those who lead us, which is absolutely true. Hebrews chapter 13 verse 17, we can read there. Obey those who lead you and be submissive, for they constantly watch over you. They are men who will give an account, so that they may do this with joy and not with sighing, for that would be to your disadvantage. Very nice. And a very good Bible verse. The elders do a tremendous job in the congregations on top of their secular work and family responsibilities, and they deserve our consideration, our respect, and our cooperation. That being said, what do they lead? Our lives or Jehovah's organization? We all know the answer, Jehovah's organization. Which means, for example, that the governing body has the authority to decide how meetings are organized, how kingdom halls are built, what happens inside the halls, and so on. Within the structures of the organization, the elders can give any instructions they wish. They are fully entitled to do so. They have received this right from Jehovah. This is biblical, as long as these instructions do not go against Jehovah's laws, of course. Outside the framework of the organization, a Jehovah's Witness can do as he wishes, as long as he does not break any divine law. He is accountable to his own conscience, to Jehovah, certainly not to the elders or the governing body. He makes his own choices, takes his own decisions, and will take responsibility for them. Once outside the material structure, so to speak, of the organization, the members of the governing body and the elders have no right within the organization. They have no authority to give us instructions, nor to interfere in our private lives. They are not our owners. Please pay attention to the following. The Watchtower of October 1st, 1994, page 20, paragraph 20. I find this paragraph to be extraordinarily balanced, full of biblical wisdom and common sense, touching the very heart of the Christian life. Let me quote it for you. Jehovah created humans with free will, the ability to make decisions for themselves. While elders are supposed to give counsel and even discipline, they must not control the lives or faith of others. Paul said, "Not that we have authority over your faith, but we are fellow workers for your joy. For it is by your faith that you stand firm," according to 2 Corinthians 1:24. The paragraph continues, "Indeed, each one will carry his own load." Galatians 6:5. Jehovah grants us great freedom within the boundaries of his laws and principles. That is why elders should avoid establishing rules where only principles apply, as long as the scriptures are not being violated. Likewise, they should restrain any tendency to turn personal opinions into dogma or to let their pride get involved when someone challenges their point of view. From 2 Corinthians 3:17 to 1 Peter 2:16. End of quote. You know, brothers, sisters, and friends, what I'm about to say might sound a little silly to you, but it could be that this paragraph is a key to solving many problems within Jehovah's organization. I will repeat this sentence from the paragraph. The elders, and therefore obviously the members of the governing body, since they are elders, must not control the lives or faith of others. I don't know if I'm the only one who thinks this way, but from the moment where brothers and sisters are threatened with disfellowshipping or labeled as rebellious or disobedient, trying to make them feel guilty, etc., if they don't follow the instructions of the governing body or the elders on completely personal matters, aren't we actually controlling the opinions of the brothers and sisters? For example, during the COVID crisis, the governing body acted in a coercive manner. That's the reality. But since the vaccine was a completely personal and conscience-based matter, didn't they try to control the opinions of the brothers and sisters? Aren't they controlling the opinions of the brothers and sisters when they give instructions that the brothers and sisters are required to obey? For example, in the event of a possible natural disaster, in the event of the risk of armed conflict, in the case of deciding to pursue long-term studies, in the case of deciding to join a dating group for single brothers and sisters, in the case of deciding to talk about the Bible on social media. And I'll even surprise you, in the case where a Jehovah's Witness decides to have a weapon at home to defend themselves or their family. Isn't the governing body trying to dominate the faith and conscience of its brothers and sisters? That's what we'll look at in my next video, especially by clarifying the difference between an order, an instruction, and a suggestion, and by analyzing the different situations I just mentioned. Like this video to give visibility to this channel if you wish. Of course, to my right is the main video of this channel, and to my left you can click on the little bubble to subscribe. Thank you very much for listening, and see you very soon.